Hello friends, this is Tim Collins coming to you again with that weekend word. There's a scripture that I really love in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9. Paul says, "But he said to me," God said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Paul writes, "Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." I think we could interpret that to say when we are strong, sometimes we forget that we need God, and we don't totally rely on God because we think we're strong enough. But when we're devastated, when we are unable to do anything, we are so weak, we know we cannot accomplish anything, then we must truly rely on God. And when we rely entirely on God, that's when God is able to do the most in our lives. An example, I think, of weakness being power is Gideon in Judges chapter 6. Actually, the last sentence of Judges 5, that's Judges 5:31, says, "Then the land had peace 40 years. Sometimes, unfortunately, prosperity is one of the worst things that can happen to Christians. When we're at peace, when things are going well, we forget God. We forget how much we need God. We do not totally rely on God when things are going well. Then Judges 6:1 says that the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. God turned them over to the Midianites to help them realize just how powerless they were without him. Judges 6:6 says, "Midian so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help." They had finally gotten to the point that they realized how weak they were and how much they needed God. And when they cried out to God, God found a champion in Gideon. Now look at Gideon's story. In Judges 6:14, the Lord turned to Gideon and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" And then Gideon said in verse 15, "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." Gideon recognized his weakness, but that was where God could be so powerful, when Gideon realized he could not do it on his own, but he was willing to rely on God. Gideon recognized his weakness, but you know the rest of the story. And when Gideon finally took on the task that God had assigned him to, he sent messengers throughout the land raising an army. They had an army of 30,000 people. Not a large army when the enemy numbers 135,000, okay, about 4 to 1. But 30,000 people, God said, is too strong. You're too strong in your own might. When I deliver Midian into your hands, you'll think you did it. You'll take some credit for it. God will not share his glory with anyone. God is glorified in working miracles. God wanted it indisputable that he had done everything to deliver Midian into Gideon's hand. And so, you know the story, they set the cowards home. That weeded out 20,000 of them. Left with 10,000, odds were not just 13 to 1. And odds are not very good, but God said, no, you're still too strong in yourself. And finally, you know the story. They winnowed it out until they had 300 men that God could rely on, and they realized they had no power except God. And so, armed with flashlights, they attacked 135,000 Midianites at their weakest. When they finally became weak enough, they had no alternative but to glorify God and rely entirely on God. Then they were able to rout 135,000 Midianites with 300 men armed with flashlights. See, God glories in our weakness, because that is when we fully rely on God. How about this? How about we just realize we can't do anything in ourselves and we just rely on God to start with? Wouldn't that be great? Things would be different in our lives sometimes. Well, I hope you'll be in church somewhere Sunday, worshiping God in spirit and in truth. God bless you. We love you.